Here we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we've reached another point in time where we have to chronicle the biggest douchebags that hard rock and heavy metal have offered us over the past 12 months. From November till October, we have had so many stories that we've talked about that have involved superstars of this distinction. Stories that have certainly caused us to scratch our heads a little bit, and even those that made us throw our arms up and wave them around like one of those wacky inflatable arm-flailing tube men in disgust or just surprise, wondering why these words or these actions were coming out of the mouths or bodies of some of our most beloved stars. But here we are, we have to chronicle it once again, like 2 years ago whenever this phenomenon began, and last year where it continued. It's time for round 3. Here's 2016's top 10 rock and heavy metal douchebags of the year. But before we get started, we have a couple of honorable mentions to talk about. First of all, Varg for basically bragging about killing Euronymous. That's not necessarily something he shied away from in the past, but doing it in a YouTube video, I guess YouTube really is the medium for everybody. How about death itself? Stop killing people, you fuck! Jesus Christ, how many people have we lost over the past 12 months? Scott Weiland, Lemmy Kilmister, David Bowie. The list goes on and on. Man, stop it. And, some dude named C. Gibson, but that's because a fan told me to. You kicked him out of the band, over like some internet thing? Fuck off, that's really lame. So here we go, the actual list. Are you revved up? Is your engine set? Have you got your snack? Have you got your drink? If you don't, well, too bad, we're going on without you. The class is leaving you behind. Here comes number 10, who's Wes Scantlin. Wes Scantlin was on the list last year at a higher level, and this is a year that has just continued to go out of control for Wes. Last year he was on because he was getting drunk, he was lip-syncing, he was basically just not being a very good individual or a very good performer. It was getting to the point where they were telling people that were attending these shows to stay for the local bands and leave whenever Puddle of Mudd was scheduled to go on stage. Not exactly something good for the rest of the band for having to deal with this prick, but this year has just continued. He's had the police at his house for a couple of different reasons. He's been drunk once again, DUIs aplenty. Man, Wes is just a guy that, really doesn't need to stop being a douche. He just needs a couple of weeks inside of a, insane asylum or something. Whatever happened to Wes Scantlin just needs to go down in history. That way nobody can freaking do it ever again. Number 9, Tim Lembestis. This is something that just happened a couple of weeks ago and is really, really bizarre. Really, Tim was complaining about the fact that before he went into jail for, putting a hit out on his wife, that he was being denied his medication, which was set to offset some of the problems or the side effects caused by using steroids. And that based around this, he was actually given a bad lease on life. All of a sudden, his Greek god-like body was now being affected, and now Tim Lembestis is now Tim Lambrestis. He's got titties now, ladies and gentlemen. Is it something to ha-ha guffaw about? Maybe. I certainly think it's kind of funny, because why would you want to use steroids in the first place? Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds, name another one, Roger Clemens. This is something that's ridiculous considering, first of all, I didn't even realize Tim was all that buff, but then again, I don't really pay attention to that kind of crap. And second of all, this is coming out years later, and he said the words Greek godlike body. Come on, how full of yourself are you? Give me a break. You're a douche that's in prison already. There's no other place really for you to go. Maybe we can airlift you to another planet. Number 8, J.J. French. J.J. French is a Twisted Sister, and he was stating that it is really silly that a lot of older bands have been putting out brand new albums as though that they are going to be played. And, why would you do that? Just go out and give the people what they want. Play the songs that they want. Who gives a shit about new material? You're not going to promote it the same way. You're not going to play it. What's the point? I think the point is that people who are musicians tend to like writing new music. They have new experiences, regardless of their age, regardless of how long that they've been a band. Are they necessarily going out there trying to sell 10 million copies, or even half of the numbers of copies that they had at their peak? No, absolutely not. But they're doing that to give the fans a brand new experience, play a couple songs on the tour. Sure, those that only know the band for the big hits are going to be clamoring for the Come On Feel the Noises and, whatevers of the world, Enter Sandman, blah, blah, blah. But those that have been fans for a long period of time are going to respect things like that. So JJ's just flat out wrong on that. If you want to be a lazy band and just play your hits and essentially be a greatest hits group, you're basically a cover band of yourself, and basically means you're Kiss. Number 7 is Kerry King. Kerry King, amazingly enough, higher on the list last year, but this year, what he said was just bona fide ridiculous as opposed to flat out stupid. Kerry decided that he was going to take the notion and of the mind that Iron Maiden and Metallica are simply living off of past successes, which sounds kind of similar to what JJ French just said. Essentially, JJ just said that live off of your past success, that's all that you should do, and Kerry King's basically saying that's what 2 of the biggest heavy metal bands of all time are doing. The problem with this is that's what Slayer's doing too. If you go to a Slayer concert and they play something off of the brand new record, sure, you're probably going to be excited, but what do you actually want to hear? Do you actually want to hear Rain and Blood? Do you actually want to hear Angel of Death? Do you actually want to hear one of the other songs from those iconic first 4 or 5 albums? Yeah, you probably do. That's probably what you're looking for. So basically, Kerry, what you said was retarded. It was stupid, it applies to you, and it's applied to you for a long time. Number 6 is Gene Simmons. Now, again, lower on the list. We're really making progress with some of these people. However, Gene Simmons, of course, made some pretty disgusting comments about Prince after he passed away. You know, Prince, of course, passed away earlier this year, and Gene essentially said that it was a shame that Prince committed suicide, essentially. It's not the worst thing in the world that he said, but it's pretty disgusting considering it's a man's life. And it's one of those things that maybe enters into your brain hole, maybe goes through your ear and just swirls around your brain, and the little voice says, "Hey, you should say this. Nothing wrong will ever happen based around you saying this." And your brain, and you, in unison, holding hands like you are part of some sort of, circle of peace, needs to say to that little voice, "No, if I say that, people think I'm insensitive and an asshole." And that's what happened. People thought you were insensitive, people thought you were an asshole, people thought you were a douchebag. What's this list for again? Number 5, Bobby Blotzer from Rat. This fucking fiasco. Oh my god. For those of you who are unaware, Rat is now a gigantic clusterfuck. Bobby now owns the rights to the band's everything, I suppose. He essentially slid in from under the radar and took it. The rest of the band members are now, we don't know where they're at. And he's hired a bunch of people to now play as Bobby Blotzer's Rat. That's really nice, isn't it? If that's not a dickbag move, if that's not a douchebag move, I don't know what the hell is. Maybe Bobby Blotzer should just, turn into a rat. Who the fuck knows? Maybe he should actually come out of a cellar and have to deal with somebody with a little bit of poison. Number 4, Dave and Justice Mustaine. Oh my gosh, this is 100% centered around what happened with the Havoc scenario with the tour that they were going to have Havoc on, and it just didn't fall, it fell through. They didn't want him on there. They said that there was payment issues and there was this and that. They were represented, and this whole big mess. And it made Justice and Dave look worse than it made Havoc look. It made Havoc come out look like $1 million. They're getting free promotion out of this because now the names are on the tongues of people that are talking about what's going on with Dave and Justice. And this, David Justice, that sounds like one of those fucking, it sounds like David Busters. David Justice. I'm going to David Justice, Mom. I'm going to play some skee-ball. Fucking hell, man. I'm going to play some pinball, some skee-ball, then I'm going to play with my balls. Maybe that's what they were doing whenever they made this decision. Maybe they were just in the boardroom. You couldn't see it because they're eye contact trying to keep that going on. But that's what's happening behind closed doors, behind the scenes, underneath the desk, what you can't see. This was fucked, and Dave looks horrible in the process, and Justice, who barely had a profile whenever it came to heavy metal in general, besides the fact that he's Dave's son, looks like shit right out of the gate. What a good start. Number 3, we have Robb Flynn. Oh my goodness. Robb Flynn went from being pretty chill to the heavy metal representative of SJW in the period of like 10 months. And it wasn't even something that he totally went for, but based off of what he did, and based off of how people took it, it's what he became. He changed lyrics to, "Is there anybody out there?" to talk about Phil Anselmo. And we all know what Phil Anselmo did earlier this year. He made videos about this. He made videos about racism. And basically, the whole thing turned against him. It became a backlash, and the handlement of this was not well done. It was something where Rob was trying to make a stand. Rob was trying to make a statement. but instead came out looking like and sounding like a complete and total immortal douche. Especially whenever it comes to a style of music such as heavy metal, which isn't necessarily trying to do the whole, PC thing. Kind of been what metal's been about since the start, not being PC. Trying to be PC whenever you're in a genre that's not very PC, that's not very PC. It's PS. Pretty stupid. Number 2 is Phil Anselmo. And yeah, in order to have one, you have to have the other. That's the situation here. In order to have Robb Flynn on this list, you do have to have Phil Anselmo on this list, regardless to your thoughts about what happened at Dime Bash back in January. Is Phil racist? That was the question. Of course, Phil Anselmo recently answered that, saying no, he regrets what he did. If he could take it back, he would absolutely do it. He is offering the apology, blah, blah, blah. However, there was other stuff that was going on. There was a video that talked about that. But this is still something where you still made the mistake. The thing still happened, and it did take a while for there to be ownership to this. It did take a little bit of time for there to be a little bit of ownership of this, and it's something that definitely made a lot of people not only uncomfortable, but it made a lot of people think about and reconsider Phil Anselmo as a person, and maybe reconsider Pantera as a person. We got Vinnie Paul that was talking about how this is not the first time that Phil has damaged himself or the reputation of Pantera as a person, or as a band, or maybe a band is a person the same way that a business is a person, for tax purposes or whatever the fuck. But either way, this is something that just has become an out-of-control story, to the point where now, if you want to mention Phil Anselmo, there are many people that are just sick and tired of it, and honestly, myself included. But this douche, basically, his biggest mistake was not immediately coming out and talking about it. Instead, it seemed like he retreated for a while. Whether or not you agree with his response, whether or not you agree with what he did, whether or not you agree with this was one of the biggest stories of the year, one of the most ridiculous stories of the year, and may have actually led to a lot more of the SJW, or social justice warrior, a crowd to really come on board the heavy metal wagon and start to criticize a lot more. It made it open for a lot more critique, because we've seen that within articles talking about the shows from Shining, either that or Talk. There's been a little bit more of that awareness that has become present, and it has all began because of this circular, first moment that occurred at Dime Bash back in January. So whether or not you agree that he's a douche or not, it is something that has led to something even greater than that. It's basically a spawn point. But that brings us to number 1. The number 1 biggest douchebag of the past 12 months. It's ISIS. You might say that ISIS, the heavy metal band? No, the group. Because basically, you cannot compete with a group that essentially went into a Queens of the Stone Age, Eagles of Death Metal rather, performance, and essentially shake the entire world to the ground. Basically, 100% completely shattering the illusion of safety for a time period of weeks, for some maybe months. Some may still not totally feel safe whenever they leave their house, based around the events that happened at the Bataclan in Paris, France, in November of 2015, right as this list's, timetable began. It was instantaneous news. It was something that was really mirrored with other attacks that took place in Paris that very same day. But nothing was as similar to the hostage situation. Opening fire, number of people being killed, and everywhere the message of hate, the message of fear, was essentially being delivered. It was being delivered into each and every home. And the Eagles of Death Metal, hard rock and heavy metal essentially, were at the forefront of this. And they were in the forefront in the negative way. Every member of the band is safe, and they've delivered heartfelt tributes and recounts of the activities that occurred that night. And it's something that, if you have the opportunity to watch it, seek it out on YouTube. And it's quite a sight to see. It's something to see that emotion, that real emotion. This isn't going to turn political, I assure you of that. But ISIS, or is definitely the biggest douchebag of the past year. Because right then and there, it basically made us stop and collectively wonder where the fuck that we've gone wrong as a world and as a society. And that's not just America. Because this didn't happen in America, this happened in France. We have to stop as a world populace and wonder where the fuck we went wrong. and wonder how we've gotten this far gone. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The top 10 douchebags of hard rock and heavy metal of the year 2016. Really, November 2015 to October 2016. If you thought somebody should have been on this list, let me know in the comments below. If you thought that somebody should not have been on this list, do the same damn thing. My name is coverkillernation, and I'll talk to you guys next time. And as always, I'm a douchebag too. I'm like number 0. I should have a platinum medal for douchebaggery. All because of 5 reasons people hate Slayer. You watched that video yet? If you haven't, you should.